This is the audio recording for the Buddhism presentation. If you've already listened to the Hinduism one, you'll know that I'm going to focus mainly on reading the slides to help folks out with vocabulary and certain words and stuff like that. I will add a little bit here and there, but I'll try to keep that down to a minimum unless I think it's something really interesting or something you might get some value out of. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll still do the next slide comment as best I can. So let's get it going. Next slide. Start right off with a picture. These are some Buddhist monks they're from Tibet, which is a province or country type thing. It's very debated about how much it is separated from China, but this is kind of very, very traditional type things. If you ever heard of the Dalai Lama, this is kind of this group right here. The Dalai Lama is part of this group. So next slide. All right. The origin of Buddhism. Again, origin means where it came from, where it started. Around 500 BCE, so this is 500 years before the birth of Christ, or before Common Era. Buddhism originated in India and rapidly spread from there. Today, Buddhism is the fourth largest religion in the world, with 6% of the population being Buddhist. The religion's largest numbers of followers are found in southern and eastern Asia. So even though it started in India and kind of was an offshoot of Hinduism, it spread mainly eastward into China and other parts of South and East Asia. Next slide. You can see here there's a map, has the population distribution about where people who practice Buddhism live. And you can see most of your heavy concentrations are in the area around China, Vietnam, and you got some in Japan, other places like that, Mongolia, which is that kind of dark orange country above China. And then you've got them spread out through other parts of the world as well. North America, Australia, parts of Western Europe. Next slide. Gautama. Buddhism was founded by the royal Indian prince Siddhartha Gautama. He was a rich man, led a life of luxury. He was very troubled. However, he was very troubled by the poverty and suffering that he saw around him. He became a monk and traveled around India for years, hoping to find out why people had to suffer. Next slide. This is a statue of Siddhartha Gautama, one of the first ones they've found. So this is the original man who would eventually be known as the Buddha. Buddha. After meditating about the unhappiness of man, he finally thought he understood what had to be done. Gautama felt that people could find peace only if they reject greed and desire. He became the Buddha, or enlightened one, after spending so much time pondering the ways of life. Pondering the ways, it means thinking about the ways of life. Basically, the kind of legend with this goes that he sat down under a tree for several days until he finally arose and had become this enlightened one. Next slide. This is a painting of Buddha surrounded by different monks. Those would be essentially priests. You can see Buddha signified by the kind of glowing thing around the head. Next slide. Enlightenment. Buddha traveled all over ancient India, sharing his enlightenment with others. And soon many people became devout followers. Buddha recorded his basic teachings in the Tripitaka, also known as the Pali Canon. You may see that word too. But the Tripitaka, the holy book that teaches that suffering exists in the world, but humans can overcome it by becoming enlightened. So Tripitaka would definitely be the sacred book or holy book that you would need to know for Buddhism. Next slide. Sarnath. This is the location where Buddha gave his first sermon or speech. Next slide. Beliefs. Buddha taught that there were four noble truths in life. These were basic instructions that teach suffering exists in the world and humans must reach enlightenment to rise above it. Buddhists also believe in reincarnation, similar to Hinduism, which is a cycle of birth and rebirth, where one's behavior in this life determines what one becomes in the next life. Buddhists do not believe in a god or gods. Instead, they follow Buddha's teachings. That will come up as some debate at some point. Some people believe that there are many different Buddhas and have different attributes and things like that. So it's a kind of a split in Buddhism, whether or not they do or do not believe in gods. But majority, we're going to go with they don't. Next slide. This is the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple in Singapore. Very elaborate. Next slide. Nirvana. Nirvana is the ultimate goal of Buddhists. It's the state of enlightenment where one can have happiness and peace. The best way I can describe that is if you think about the last day of school every year. You've gone home, you went to a party, or you hung out with your friends, played video games, or maybe you just relaxed at home, but you're going to bed and going to sleep, and you just have that moment right before you go to sleep of knowing that you don't have any more tests to take and you don't have any more things to kind of worry you in terms of school for a while. And so it's that kind of that idea of that happiness and peace right there. That's about as close as you'll find it right now. In order to achieve nirvana, a person must follow the middle way. And those were 8 rules for conduct. How you act. Next slide. This is the Mahabodhi temple in India. This is where Buddha attained nirvana under the Bodhi tree. So I mentioned a little while ago, Buddha sat down under a tree for several days until he arose with the enlightenment that he needed. This is a temple placed where that happened. Next slide. The middle way. These are those 8 kind of rules or 8 truths. Mainly the way to achieve enlightenment. Number 1 was try to recognize the truth. Number 2, try to avoid evil actions and bad people. Number 3, do not say things that hurt others. That's a good one for us. Number 4, respect other people and their belongings. Number 5, choose a job that does no harm to others. Number 6, do not think evil thoughts. Number 7, avoid excitement or anger, and that's overexcitement. That's where you get too caught up in stuff and can't control yourself. And then number 8, work at meditation, thinking carefully about what matters in life. Next slide. This is the Buddha Memorial Center in Taiwan. It's a separate country off the coast of China, although China will tell you it's not. Story for another time there. Next slide.